Hi there, I'm Fiona Stocker and I'm going to read you a brief piece from my book Apple Island Wife. Something that people often ask me is how we came to live here in Tasmania, and this is a piece from the prologue which explains that a little bit. I kept coming back to an article I'd read years earlier in a Sunday newspaper featuring Tasmania. It said that vast tracts of the island were covered in ancient forest, some of it protected by World Heritage status. It was still possible to find corners of untouched wilderness there, places rarely visited by ordinary folk, but photographed relentlessly by landscape photographers. The image accompanying the article showed early morning mist poised wraith-like above a mill pond river with a backdrop of dense native forest. I began picturing myself doing the washing up at a kitchen sink, with that view. Better yet, the island had two lovely boutique cities, Hobart and Launceston, for those times when you needed a department store. I wanted to live there. But Oliver would hear none of it. "May as well go back to England," he exclaimed. Oliver was suffering from a misconception common to many people in mainland Australia, that Tasmania is a freezing wasteland, perilously close to the Antarctic. A trip there will be nothing short of a Shackleton-esque folly, resulting in icebound disaster and having to send one's children off in a lifeboat to fetch help. Actually, Tasmania sits at a latitude of 41 degrees south, and its equivalent in the Northern Hemisphere is the French Riviera. There are 4 distinct seasons and European colours in the trees planted by early settlers. It's a much more agreeable and productive environment than the mainland, some would say. One hot Brisbane evening, we popped in to see the neighbours. Melissa's father-in-law was visiting, a charismatic Californian named Rich. Brown as a nut, wiry as a bean, and intensely modern in his outlook. He lived on a yacht in Darwin, went everywhere by mountain bike, and wore purple John Lennon glasses. We placed him between 60 and 70 years old, but he still managed to be about 30 years cooler than everyone else present. If someone is physically fit, especially in a way that suggests endurance and stamina, it inspires a sort of slavish devotion in my husband. He sees them as an example of peak manliness, and his natural instincts tell him to follow disciple-like and adore. Rich's opinion was always going to count. Lucky for me it did. Rich, it emerged, had lived in Tasmania many years before, at Battery Point, one of Hobart's more illustrious suburbs. Before long, Oliver and he were in avid agreement. Tasmania was the only place in Australia where a man could possibly want to live. "Yeah, man, if you want to bring up a family and have yourself some livestock and land, Tas is the place you'd want to go," he drawled. And just as an aside here, I'll put in that I had been talking about Tasmania for about 2 years by this point, and my husband Oliver had been pathologically unable to believe me, and it took Rich about 10 minutes to persuade him. Just a little bit frustrating. It was the word land that did it. Oliver turned to me with the dawning of a new idea in his eyes. "I could have some alpacas," he said. Ah, alpacas. They'd been on his mind since an agricultural show in the Queensland hinterland. I could practically see little cartoon silhouettes of them appearing in his pupils. As we walked home, he was frothing over with newfound zeal about Tasmania. What a dream it could be to live there, all its possibilities, everything it held for us. All the things I'd been saying for 2 years. I allowed myself one sarcastic comment. "What happened to moving back to England?" He paused for a fraction of a second. "I hadn't realised how easily we could buy some land there, or alpacas. I could build a workshop. We could grow stuff." The frothing zeal continued. The next day, I got on the internet and booked 3 weeks in the tiniest camper van Tasmania had to offer, since the combined income of a self-employed cabinet maker and a stay-at-home mum had meant a certain tightening of the purse strings. A month later, we were off to explore Australia's southernmost island state. And the real adventure was about to begin. And boy did it. But if you want to know how, you got to buy the book. And I hope you enjoy.